Daddy, why was Mommy wrestling with Uncle Rob in your bed? I looked up from my coffee. The room didn't spin. It stopped. Liam was 6. He said it like he was asking about dinosaurs or snack time. He said it like it didn't matter. I didn't respond right away. I couldn't. What? I asked, too quiet. He repeated it, like I hadn't heard him the first time. They were wrestling, but they didn't have all their clothes on. I think Mommy won. Then he laughed. I didn't. That was a Sunday. The sun was coming in through the kitchen window. The kind of soft light that makes a lie harder to look at. I nodded, told Liam to go brush his teeth. He skipped away like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just detonated something. I sat there for a long time. Katie was still asleep, or pretending to be. I walked upstairs slowly, quietly, like I was sneaking up on something wild and dangerous. Our bedroom door was half open. She was in bed, curled under the covers, breathing heavy. I didn't ask. Not that morning. Not yet. I just stared. And for the first time in our 10 years together, I didn't recognize her. Later that day, I went for a drive. No music. No destination. I parked outside the old baseball field where I used to play with Rob in college. We used to joke that if either of us made it big, we'd buy that place, put our names on it. Now I couldn't say his name out loud. I didn't want to believe it. Part of me even hoped Liam had misunderstood, misread the scene. But the way he said it, so casual, so detailed, there was no misunderstanding. Wrestling. No clothes. In our bed. I didn't sleep that night. Katie didn't notice. Or she did, and didn't ask. I started watching. For the first time in years, I studied her. Her phone always face down. Her shower time increased by 15 minutes. She laughed at texts she never mentioned. She wore makeup when she said she was just grabbing groceries. She didn't look me in the eye unless she had to. Rob was still around. Still texting me like nothing changed. Memes. Inside jokes. Weekend plans. I almost threw my phone across the room every time his name lit up. He'd known Liam since he was born. My best friend. The guy I called when my dad died. The guy who stood beside me at the altar. And now he was the guy wrestling my wife while my son played with Legos in the next room. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because if I confronted too early, she'd deny it. Twist it. Say Liam imagined it. Say I was insecure. I'd be the crazy one. I knew how this worked. So I played the part. Smiled. Worked. Slept on the edge of the bed. She didn't even notice the space between us. Or maybe she did. And liked it. Thursday night, she said she was meeting her sister for drinks. I texted her sister half an hour later. Katie with you? The reply came fast. Nope, haven't seen her in weeks. So I waited. Watched Find My iPhone ping in a hotel parking lot on the other side of town. Didn't call. Didn't move. Just sat in that quiet confirmation. The next morning, she walked into the kitchen, kissed Liam on the forehead, then looked at me like everything was normal. I stared at her for 5 seconds longer than usual. She noticed. What? She asked. Nothing, I said. Just tired. That was the first true thing I'd said in days. That night, I opened her phone. I'd watched her unlock it 1,000 times. I waited until she was asleep. It took 2 swipes and 4 numbers. I found everything. Photos. Messages. Voice notes. A saved thread labeled, him red heart. I didn't read it all. Didn't have to. One photo was enough. Her. In our bed. Smiling. Hair a mess. A hand that wasn't mine on her leg. The timestamp? 2 weeks ago. The same weekend she told me she was helping her mom move furniture. I didn't cry. Not that night. I went outside, sat on the back step, and stared at the dark. I thought about Liam. His face. His question. His laugh. I thought about how he thought it was a game, and how I wasn't playing anymore. You'd think the hardest part was finding the proof. It's not. It's pretending you didn't. It's eating breakfast next to the woman who blew up your life and saying, pass the butter. It's watching her scroll through her phone, smile at someone else's message, and act like you're not bleeding beside her. It's keeping your hand steady while she tells your son to have a great day at school, knowing that 2 nights ago, she told Rob she likes it better when you're not home. I was learning the art of stillness. I didn't ask her anything that week. Not a single question. Not, where were you? Or who were you with? Or, are you sleeping with my best friend? Because I already knew the answers. And she knew that I wasn't asking. That's the game. She lied with comfort. With rhythm. With a confidence that only comes from months of practice. And I listened. Not to what she said. To how she said it. To what she left out. I was no longer searching for the truth. I was preparing to use it. Thursday night, She poured herself a glass of wine and sat on the couch like she hadn't just ended our marriage in secret. I sat across from her, acting like the man she thought was too stupid to see it. "You're quiet lately," she said. "Just work," I replied. She nodded like that made sense. Like the man who once worshipped her had simply become a little tired. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't reach for me. She just sipped her wine, sent a few texts, and smiled. That smile was for him. And I memorized it. Rob texted me the next day. "Hey man, you still good for Sunday? Liam's game." I stared at the message for a long time. It was the same tone, same fake casualness. Like nothing was broken. Like I hadn't seen the way his hand curled around her thigh in the pictures. Like I hadn't read the messages where he called me pathetic for never noticing. I didn't reply. I started backing up the evidence. I forwarded the photos, screenshotted the messages, saved them in a cloud account she didn't know about, not to use against her, just to remind myself that I wasn't crazy. Because gaslighting isn't just something you survive. It's something that haunts you. And even when you know the truth, you start to wonder if it was really that bad. If maybe you just misunderstood. So I saved the files, to look at on the nights when I started to doubt my own eyes. The first person I tried to talk to was my brother. He listened for 5 minutes and said, "You sure about this?" Katie's always been solid. I hung up, not out of anger, out of understanding. People don't want your truth if it messes with their comfort. I told my mom. She blinked, frowned, then said, "Relationships are complicated." Maybe she just felt neglected. I laughed. She didn't. That was the day I realized I'd be walking through this alone. Saturday afternoon, Katie walked into the living room in leggings and a smile. "I might be out late," she said. "Dinner with the girls." I didn't flinch. "Have fun." She paused, waiting, testing. Nothing. She walked out the door, and I sat in silence. 10 minutes later, I watched her location land at a house across town. Rob's house. I didn't follow. I documented. Liam spent the night at my sister's. I needed the house alone. I walked into our bedroom, the one with the same sheets from that photo. And I stood there, in the dark, looking at the ceiling, wondering how many nights I was asleep while they weren't. Then I sat down and started writing. Everything. From the moment Liam made that comment, to the photo in the phone, to every message I couldn't forget. I didn't write it for anyone else. I wrote it so I could breathe. Sunday morning, she came home like nothing happened. Made coffee, turned on music, kissed Liam on the head. And I watched her, like a stranger in my own kitchen. She looked at me. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said. "You seem off." "I'm not." She smiled. "Good." And I felt nothing. No hate. No sadness. Just distance. That night, I stood outside on the porch. It was cold. I texted Rob. I know. He didn't reply. I didn't need him to. The worst part wasn't the betrayal. It wasn't even the lying. It was how easy it was for everyone to believe her. How fast they turned. One by one. I hadn't even said anything yet. No announcement. No accusation. But something in her tone must have changed, because suddenly, I was the problem. Cold. Distant. Unemotional. The guy who used to be great but lost his spark. They didn't know I was the one bleeding. They just didn't care. It started with small things. Her friends stopped smiling when they saw me. Mutual friends became just her friends. I showed up to a barbecue and people barely made eye contact. Rob wasn't there, but his shadow was. I felt it in every side glance, every short answer. Then came the real one. A message from one of Katie's coworkers. "Hey, just wanted to check in. Katie mentioned you two have been having problems. Hope everything's okay." Problems. Not betrayal. Not, "I'm cheating on my husband with his best friend." No. Problems. Like this was mutual. Like I contributed to this somehow. I didn't respond. The isolation didn't stop there. Her sister, who used to text me memes and ask me for advice. Gone. Our neighbors, who always invited us to dinner. No more invites. Even Liam's school started contacting her first instead of me. I became background noise in my own life. And I let them do it. For a while. I kept pretending. Waking up. Packing Liam's lunch. Smiling when I dropped him off. Texting sure when Katie asked me to pick up groceries. She thought I was numb. I wasn't numb. I was calculating. Every day she lied to my face, I memorized the cadence. Every time someone took her side without knowing the truth, I wrote their name down in my head. Not for revenge. For clarity. Because someday, when the silence broke, I wanted to know exactly who was in the room. Liam started to notice. "Why don't you and Mommy laugh anymore?" That one hurt. but I smiled. Sometimes adults just get quiet. Did she do something bad? I blinked. Why do you ask that? Because she says you're the one who ruined everything. But I saw you hug her last week. I didn't answer. What do you tell a child who's being raised in a house of mirrors? The tipping point came one night after Liam had gone to bed. Katie walked into the living room and sat across from me. We need to talk. I stayed silent. I feel like you're not trying anymore. I looked at her. Trying what? To fix this. I almost laughed. I didn't break it, I said. She frowned. We've both made mistakes. I stared at her like she was a stranger. Have I? She looked away. You're emotionally distant, she said. You shut down. You don't touch me. You don't even ask where I am anymore. Should I? She paused. I'm still your wife. No, I said, calm as hell. You're not. She stood, voice sharper. So what? You're just done. I looked at her for a long second. You were done first, I said. You just forgot to tell me. She left the room. I didn't follow. The next day, Rob messaged again. Heard things are tense. If you ever want to grab a beer, I'm here. I stared at that message for 5 full minutes. The audacity. The performance. He kissed my wife in my house. Slept in my bed. Mocked me behind my back. And now he wanted to talk. I wrote one word. Coward. Then blocked his number. I started planning. I spoke to a lawyer. Started separating accounts. Gathered financials. Created backups of everything. I wasn't leaving yet. But I was preparing to live. Without her. Without them. The last straw came in the form of a birthday party. Liam's friend from school. Backyard balloons. Cake. Laughter. Katie was there, of course. So was Rob. I didn't expect that. He showed up halfway through, hugged everyone but me. No shame. No hesitation. People greeted him. Smiled. Laughed. He looked like a man with no conscience. Katie lit up when she saw him. I stood 20 feet away, holding 2 juice boxes and a paper plate, watching my wife beam at the man who broke her home. No one else saw it. Or maybe they did, and didn't care. I waited until she wasn't looking, then walked away. That night, I started writing again. Not just notes. A full account. Every date. Every lie. Every betrayal. I didn't know if I'd ever use it, but I needed it to exist. Proof that I wasn't crazy. Proof that I wasn't the villain in their version. They thought I was weak. They thought I was passive. But I was just quiet. And quiet doesn't mean blind. It means ready. They thought I broke. When I stopped talking, stopped showing up to group chats, stopped responding to fake check-ins. When I missed Rob's birthday for the first time in 11 years without explanation, they assumed I was folding. But they didn't know I wasn't breaking, I was building. I just didn't send out press releases while I did it. It started small. I bought a notebook and wrote 3 lines. They laughed. They lied. I listened. Every day after that, I added something. Not rage. Just truth. I built a routine that belonged to me. I woke up early. Worked out. Packed Liam's lunch. Cut sugar, caffeine, and comfort scrolling. I watched the way Katie moved through the house, still smiling, still texting, but I stopped caring who she was smiling at. Her smile wasn't mine to track anymore. I made a list of everything I'd given up to stay in that house. My time, my self-worth, my clarity. And then I started taking it all back. Quietly. I booked a call with a lawyer. Another with a therapist. I took an online course at night. I opened a burner email account and started writing again. I had no plan to be famous. I had a plan to survive without needing anyone's permission. Katie noticed. One morning, as she scrolled her phone at the table, she looked up and said, "You seem distant." I looked at her for a beat too long. Maybe I'm just closer to myself. She scoffed and went back to her messages. I started keeping a digital folder with all the evidence, her hotel check-ins, the photos I'd found, the texts, the voice notes, the night she forgot Liam's school project because she was helping her sister move, while lying in Rob's bed. I didn't save them to attack her. I saved them to remind myself I wasn't crazy. Rob texted again. Miss the old days. Hope you're good. I didn't reply. Katie asked if I'd like to come to dinner with her and some friends from work. I told her I had plans. She asked what kind. I said, private ones. She never asked again. I changed physically first. Dropped 10 pounds. Clearer skin. Better sleep. People at work noticed. You're glowing, one colleague joked. Just cutting things that no longer serve me, I replied. Liam noticed too. You don't look tired anymore, he said one night. Are you happy now? I thought about it. Not yet, but I'm on my way. My blog, just a side project, began gaining traction. Readers shared it. Then strangers messaged me. Then came the first request to collaborate. I didn't post about it. Didn't brag. I just built. Katie must have seen it. I know she read it. I caught her looking at my laptop when she thought I wasn't watching. One night, she cried in the bathroom. Door locked. Lights off. I didn't ask. Her pain wasn't mine anymore. When I told the lawyer I was ready to move forward with the separation, Katie didn't fight it. She asked, "Is this really what you want?" I looked at her and said, "No, but it's what I won't keep living through." She didn't reply. The silence was mine now. It wasn't a punishment. It was a boundary. I wasn't hiding anymore. I was refining. They thought I had disappeared. They thought I had folded. But disappearing was the best thing I could have done. It gave me space to rebuild, brick by silent brick. It didn't happen all at once. There was no dramatic moment where I walked into a room and everyone gasped. But piece by piece, they started noticing something was different. The people who once talked over me started asking questions. The ones who dismissed me began watching a little longer when I spoke. I didn't say much, but when I did, it landed. I was sharper, not louder. Focused, not bitter. Katie didn't know what to make of it. She still tried to make me flinch, to get some kind of emotional reaction. But I had stopped offering those for free. One morning over breakfast, she said, "You used to care more. You used to fight." I took a sip of coffee and said, "I stopped fighting people who were never on my side." She didn't reply, just stared. Maybe she finally heard me for the first time in years. I kept building. The blog had turned into something bigger, an audience. I hadn't meant to make it public at first. It started as personal writing, a place to bleed without interruption. But the more I wrote, the more it resonated. People shared it. Then they subscribed. Then came offers for interviews, collaborations, even speaking gigs. I declined the first few. I wasn't ready. Not for the attention, not for the eyes, but the idea that I could take the story they tried to bury me in and build something out of it, that kept me going. One email stood out. A man wrote, "I never saw it coming either. Until I did. Your words made me feel less insane." That one broke me for a minute, because I remembered what that felt like. To sit in silence, surrounded by people who believed her version of me, and feel like maybe you were losing your mind. Rob hadn't texted in weeks. His silence was its own confession. Katie, on the other hand, had shifted her tactics. Now she was kinder, sweeter, asking about my day, offering to make dinner. She even touched my shoulder in passing, like she used to. I didn't respond. She wasn't trying to fix anything. She was trying to stay close to the version of me she thought she still controlled. One night, she walked into my office and stood by the door. "I read your latest post," she said. "Didn't know you could write like that." I looked up. "You never asked who I was when you weren't talking." That landed harder than I expected. She didn't say anything else. Just nodded and walked away. People started noticing more. My coworkers, my neighbors. Even my mother, who'd once implied I probably did something to drive Katie away, called and said, "You sound grounded." I didn't hold it against her. People only see what they want to until they can't anymore. Liam was thriving. He was laughing more, sleeping better, asking deeper questions. One night he looked at me during dinner and said, "I feel like we're the same team again." I nodded and said, "We always were. We just had too many people in the locker room." He didn't get the metaphor, but he smiled anyway. It was around that time that I got the call about a podcast interview. They wanted me to talk about rebuilding after betrayal. I hesitated. Then I said yes. That episode changed everything. I told the story, not with names, not with rage, but with truth. I talked about being broken, about raising a child through silence, about what it means to wake up one day and realize no one is coming to save you. The episode hit hard. Messages poured in. Comments. People from all over saying thank you, saying me too. Katie listened to it. I know because she left her browser open. She didn't say anything for 3 days. Then one morning, while dropping Liam at school, she said, "People are listening to you." I said, "I know. You're not the same." "I wasn't allowed to be who I was before," I said. "Now I am." She didn't have a comeback. That night, I got an unexpected message. From someone we both knew. Megan, one of Katie's closest friends. She used to host wine nights with her, believed every word Katie said about me during the separation. Her message was short. "I think I owe you an apology. I believed the wrong version of you. And now I see the right one." I didn't reply. Not out of pettiness. Out of peace. I didn't need people to come back and validate me. But I wasn't going to stop them either. I started receiving invites, panels, workshops, mentorship requests. I accepted a few. Carefully. Not because I wanted to be seen, but because I finally had something worth sharing. Katie tried again, this time with nostalgia. Remember that trip to Arizona? When we got lost and found that diner in the middle of nowhere? I nodded. I remember everything, I said. Even the parts you tried to forget. She looked at me for a long moment, then asked, would you ever consider being friends again? No, I said. We were never friends. We were codependent. That's not the same thing. She looked hurt, but she didn't argue. It was the first time she didn't try to rewrite the past. The success didn't come like fireworks. It came like sunrise. Slow. I started getting messages from people who had stopped talking to me months ago. Coworkers. Former friends. Even an old coach who once told me, you'll never go far if you keep letting people walk over you. He wrote, you stood back up. I respected. I didn't respond. Again, not out of malice. I just didn't know anyone anything anymore. That was the beauty of losing everything. You learn exactly what matters. And who never did? They'll say I changed. But they never knew who I was without the weight. And I had finally dropped it. She thought I was broken. Everyone did, really. Quiet men make people uncomfortable. They mistake your silence for weakness, your stillness for fear. Katie thought I kept my mouth shut because I didn't have the strength to speak. But that silence, that long, steady silence, wasn't about pain anymore. It was distance. I wasn't retreating. I was rising. She started calling more often. Not about Liam. About little things. A package mix-up. A question about a password. Something about an old friend reaching out. But each time, there was a hesitation. A pause before she hung up. A second of silence like she wanted me to ask something else. How she was, what she missed. But I didn't. I kept it functional. Straight. Cold but not cruel. Then she asked to meet for coffee just to talk. I said no. She said it wouldn't be weird. I said it already was. She paused, like she hadn't expected that. Then she tried again. I feel like I don't know you anymore. I answered honestly. You never did. You knew the version of me you needed. This one doesn't need you. She didn't respond. And for the first time, I could feel it. Not anger, not confusion, just a crack in her certainty. She realized she had no hold left. The story I was telling through my work had reached more people than I expected. After the podcast, articles followed. Guest pieces. Requests. And I kept showing up, not to prove anything, but because I liked who I was in those spaces. Calm. Articulate. Direct. One interviewer asked me, if you could go back, would you change anything? I said, only the time I wasted trying to be understood by people who were invested in misunderstanding me. It hit. That line was shared more than anything else I'd written. I started getting invited to rooms I never thought I'd enter. Not influencer stuff. Real things. Quiet dinners with thinkers. Men rebuilding. Women who had survived worse. I stopped being that guy whose wife cheated and became the guy who turned that into something. And the irony was that the less I tried to be seen, the more they saw me. Katie saw it too. She stopped being flirty and started being careful. Her tone shifted. Her texts were less confident. One night she wrote, you're doing amazing things. I'm proud of you. I didn't reply. The old me would have tried to make that moment feel redemptive. This version just let it pass. Rob never resurfaced. Not directly. I heard things. Through friends of friends. He wasn't doing well. Drinking too much. Staying inside. There were whispers about the affair not ending well. About her walking out. About him realizing no one trusted him anymore. I didn't feel good hearing it. I didn't feel bad either. I just didn't feel connected. His chapter in my story had ended with a period, not a question mark. The people who once believed her version started slowly appearing again. Megan messaged again. This time longer. I feel stupid for how easily I believed her. You were always kind to me. Steady. I should have known. I replied simply. We all see what we're ready to see. She said, that sounds like something from your blog. It is, I said. Others followed. Old coworkers. Her friends. Even two of Rob's former inner circle. They didn't apologize directly, but they reappeared with curiosity, with caution, and I let them stay in that limbo. I wasn't interested in rebuilding anything that collapsed under the weight of a lie. My mother called again, this time with something I never expected. I was wrong. I waited. She continued, I didn't believe you because it was easier to believe the version where nothing was wrong. I'm sorry. It took everything in me not to let that moment pass with sarcasm. But I'd moved past needing people to pay a price. So I just said, thank you. And that was that. Liam was thriving. His teachers noticed. He laughed more. Was more confident. One night he told me, "You feel safe again." I asked, "Did I ever stop feeling that way?" He said, "Not really, but you were quieter, like you were holding your breath." I told him I wasn't anymore, and he smiled. Katie tried one more time. She invited me to a small gathering. Just friends, people from the old days. I declined. She said, "They miss you." I said, "They don't know me now." And they never really did. She asked, "Are you ever going to stop being angry?" I paused. "I'm not angry. You just don't like the version of me that isn't accessible anymore." That one landed. I could feel it over the phone. The silence was different. Resigned. Not defeated, just finally aware. I stood on a stage 1 month later. Small event. Nothing massive, but enough people to notice. I told my story, not with names, just the arc. The collapse. The silence. The rebuild. I ended it with this: "You can survive anything if you stop trying to make it look like healing to people who were rooting for your failure." They stood and clapped. Katie was in the back. I didn't acknowledge her. She left early. And that told me more than any message ever could. There was no announcement. No big reveal. Just a shift. Quiet at first. The kind of change you don't notice immediately, until suddenly, you do. It began with stares. Not long ones. Just those extra few seconds where someone looks at you, blinks slower, processes longer. Then the messages started. Not from the ones who hurt me directly. Not Katie or Rob. But the others, the silent ones. The ones who knew and stayed neutral. Who whispered after I left the room. Who shrugged and said, "It's not my business." Now they were watching. Not in pity. In curiosity. In discomfort. I had become something they didn't expect. And people hate surprises that make them feel small. The blog was growing beyond what I imagined. What started as survival was now structure. I had brand deals. Speaking gigs. Consultations. A book offer. I hadn't said yes to any of it yet, but it was coming. Momentum had built up like a wave. I didn't chase it. I let it carry me. One night, after a webinar I hosted for a small men's group, I received a message from a guy I hadn't seen since college. "Bro, I've been following everything." I didn't say anything before because I didn't want to pick sides. But I see it now. All of it. "You become something else." That phrase stuck with me. You become something else. Not, "You recovered." Not, "You bounce back." No. Something else. I like that. Even Katie noticed. She no longer looked at me the same. Her tone was uncertain. Her posture more careful. She didn't flirt or ask passive-aggressive questions anymore. She asked real ones. "How are you? Do you need help with anything? Is there anything I should know about Liam's schedule?" I answered plainly, briefly, politely, nothing more. And I watched her start to realize something. That she was talking to a man who had nothing left to prove. She once stood in front of me thinking I was too weak to leave. Now she could barely meet my eyes. We saw each other once at a school fundraiser. I was standing near the back with a few parents who knew nothing of our history, laughing about something someone said. Katie walked in late. Rob wasn't with her. She looked around the room and stopped when she saw me. I didn't move. I didn't even flinch. Just kept listening, smiling at the joke. That moment, I felt it. I no longer occupied the role she'd written for me in her story. I was no longer her mistake, or her backup plan, or her old regret. I was untouchable. People came up to me after the event. One of the parents said, "I read something you wrote. Someone shared it in a group I'm in. I didn't realize it was you. It helped me through something dark." I just nodded. I didn't ask which piece. I didn't need to know. It was enough that the words mattered, that I mattered. Not as a man who survived betrayal, but as a man who stopped letting betrayal define his name. Rob was gone. I hadn't heard a word from him in nearly a year. Someone told me he moved cities, took a remote job. Word was, Katie had stopped seeing him months after everything fell apart, and neither of them wanted to talk about why. That was fine by me. Let their silence devour itself. I wasn't interested in their reasons anymore. Only my results. Then it happened. I was invited to speak at a major conference. One I used to watch on YouTube, admiring the people on stage. And now they wanted me. I didn't have to apply. Didn't pitch. They came to me. The topic? Reinvention after collapse. I said yes. When I walked onto that stage, lights hot, audience full, I didn't think of Katie. I didn't think of Rob. I didn't think of the family dinners where people judged me in silence. I thought of Liam. Of his voice saying, "You're not angry anymore." Of the first moment I looked in the mirror and liked who looked back. I told my story. Not for drama. For power. And when I finished, they stood. The whole room. They clapped. Some cheered. And in that noise, I realized I had finally become the man I'd been trying to be for years. Not perfect. Not famous. Just real. Solid. Seen. The next day, Katie sent a message. Just one line. I watched the talk. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. She was watching now. They all were. But I had stopped looking back. It's strange how silence can sound so different depending on who's living in it. For me, silence used to be heavy. It used to choke me. Now it's light. Clean. Honest. I wake up in it. I go to sleep in it. And I no longer fill it with noise that was never mine to carry. Katie, though, she's still stuck in the echo. The echo of who I used to be. Of who she thought I'd always be. She tries to talk to me sometimes, usually through the soft edges of co-parenting. Polite updates. Suggestions about Liam's schedule. Occasionally, there's a longer message, like she's building up to something else, something personal. I never open that door. We only talk about Liam, because that's the only thing between us that still matters. She's learning, slowly, that kindness doesn't mean closeness. That just because I'm not angry, doesn't mean I forgot. That being civil is not an invitation back into my life. She's used to people falling apart when she leaves. I was the first one who stood still. And now she can't understand how I'm still standing. The clarity I live in now wasn't given. It was earned, through silence, through days where I rebuilt the pieces no one applauded, through nights where I held myself together with nothing but stubborn breath and the knowledge that I was worth more than the role I'd been assigned in her story. My life now? It's not loud. It's not glamorous. But it's solid. I moved out of the old place a few months ago. The house held too many shadows. Too many invisible handprints on walls I didn't repaint. I found a place near the woods, quiet, sun-filled, full of air and space that didn't remember pain. Liam loves it. We planted a tree in the backyard together, and he calls it ours. Every time it grows another inch, he points it out like it's proof of something. Maybe it is. Works good. The platform's grown beyond what I expected. People reach out daily now, some to thank me, others to ask how. I still answer when I can. Still show up for the ones just starting their own rebuild. Because I remember what it felt like to scream into a void and get nothing back. And I refuse to be just another silent witness to someone else's collapse. One night, while cleaning out some boxes, I found an old photo of Katie and me. Smiling. Pre-everything. I looked at it for a long time. Not with pain. Not even with nostalgia. Just with awareness. That was a different man. A man who still thought love meant sacrificing clarity. That man isn't dead. But he's not in charge anymore. Katie sent a message the next day. I drove by your new place. Looks peaceful. I didn't answer. 2 days later, she tried again. Do you ever think we could be in the same room and not feel like strangers? I stared at the screen, then locked my phone. Not because I was unsure. Because I was completely sure. The version of me she knew would have replied. Explained. Tried to make her feel better. This version? He protects his peace. Rob's name hasn't been said in almost a year. I don't know where he is. Don't care. Last I heard, he left his job. Something about an internal investigation. Maybe karma, maybe coincidence. Doesn't matter. That story is closed. Sealed. Archived. Sometimes people still ask, how did you not lose your mind? After everything? I never have a polished answer. Usually I just say, I stopped trying to be right in stories that were designed to make me wrong. That usually shuts them up. I don't date much. Not yet. I've met a few people. Nothing serious. Mostly good conversation, a few shared silences. One woman, a photographer, once told me, you don't carry your past like a wound. You carry it like armor. I told her it's not armor. It's just truth that I stopped being afraid of. She said she liked that. I didn't tell her that was new for me. Liam's the one who sees the difference. A few weeks ago, we sat on the porch, watching the tree we planted move in the wind. He looked up at me and said, you smile more now. I asked, is that a good thing? He said, it makes me feel like nothing's wrong. And I realized that's all I ever wanted to give him. A home without tension. A father without ghosts. Katie came by to drop off a school form. She stood in the entryway for a moment longer than necessary. Looked around. Said, it feels different here. It is, I said. You feel different too. I am. I don't think I ever knew this version of you. You didn't let yourself, I said. She blinked. Said nothing more. And I closed the door after she left. Not hard. Just, finally. Most people think transformation is loud. They expect sparks, noise, a grand unveiling. But real growth? The kind that lasts? It happens in silence. Quiet mornings. Empty rooms. Repeated choices no one applauds. That's where I built everything. Not in revenge. In discipline. And by the time they noticed, I was already done. Not done becoming. Done proving. I had nothing left to defend. My name wasn't up for debate anymore. Katie started reaching out more. Nothing dramatic, just drips. A forwarded article I'd written. A photo of Liam. A comment about how he was more centered lately. I replied when I had to. Kept it short. Safe. Professional. But I knew what she was doing. She was checking the door. Seeing if it was still open. Wondering if I'd left it unlocked without realizing. I hadn't. One night she messaged, "It's incredible what you've built." I said, "Thanks." Nothing more. She followed with, "Do you ever miss any of it?" Us. I waited a long time to answer. Then I typed, "I miss who I thought we were." She never replied. That silence told me she finally understood what she'd lost. And that it wasn't coming back. Rob was a ghost now. Not just in my life, but in theirs. His name stopped coming up. He'd been written out of conversations like a character killed off in a show no one wanted to admit they'd once loved. From what I heard, he tried to repair his image. New job. New city. But people don't forget the ones who smile in your face while stealing your home. Liam was thriving. He asked better questions. Had a deeper laugh. He'd come to my events sometimes and just watch. He once told me, "I think you help people who don't even know they needed it." I smiled. That's the goal. "Do you still hurt sometimes?" he asked. "No," I said. Not about the past. Just about how long I lived like I deserved it. The words caught in my throat, but he nodded like he understood more than I thought he could. The speaking gigs got bigger. The inbox stayed full. I hired an assistant. Launched a second project? Not for fame, just to keep building. Creation became a language. One I didn't need to translate for anyone. Then came the article. A national outlet ran a piece on me, from broken husband to builder of men. It was surreal. They told my story. And they got it right. I didn't ask for it. Didn't pitch it. They just saw me. Katie saw it too. She didn't mention it directly, but her text changed. The tone softened. There was more hesitation. One afternoon, she sent, "I'm glad you didn't give up on yourself." I didn't answer. Because she still didn't get it. I never gave up on myself. I just gave up on proving my worth to people who never planned to recognize it. A few weeks later, we crossed paths at a local event for Liam's school. She looked good. Put together. Composed. But there was something in her eyes, something unsettled. We made small talk. Brief. Measured. Then she said, "I never imagined you'd become of this." I smiled. "That's because you only knew the version of me that kept shrinking to make you feel big." She blinked. I kept smiling. Then I walked away. Not because I needed to prove a point, but because the point had already been made. I was untouchable now. Not in the sense that I was better than anyone, but in the sense that their words couldn't reach me. Their approval meant nothing. Their silence couldn't wound me. They had no access left. And that freedom? It was everything. I used to think healing meant closure. That one day someone would explain why it all happened. That I'd hear the perfect sentence, or see the perfect apology, and it would click. The peace, the release, the understanding. But closure isn't a gift. It's a boundary. It's what you decide is enough. And I had decided. Not because it was tidy. Because it was over. My life didn't just move on, it moved upward. The house I lived in now didn't have the same echoes. No footsteps behind me. No memories baked into the floorboards. Just light. Air. Quiet. Liam had a room that faced the trees, and sometimes I'd find him sitting by the window, sketching things he saw. He said it helped his brain slow down. I knew what he meant. Katie didn't text as often anymore. The last few had gone unanswered. Not ignored, just unnecessary. There was nothing left to say. I hadn't blocked her. I didn't need to. Some walls don't need locks when there's no door left to knock on. Rob was still gone. A faded thread in a chapter I'd stopped rereading. I hadn't spoken his name aloud in over a year. Not because it hurt, because it didn't matter. Sometimes, when people asked how it all started, I just said, it ended when it needed to. I let them guess the rest. The world around me had changed, or maybe I just wasn't trying to fit into it anymore. I was invited to speak internationally. I taught workshops for people who had never been told they mattered. I coached men who didn't know they were allowed to feel. I showed up, consistently, for a version of myself I would have needed back then. It wasn't a brand. It was a mission. And it worked. But success wasn't the real trophy. Peace was. I didn't need to be seen anymore. I didn't check comments. I didn't post every win. My life became smaller on the surface and deeper beneath it. The people who once doubted me had gone quiet. Some resurfaced with careful words. Some offered congratulations without context. Others just hovered, watching, maybe regretting. Megan, Katie's old friend, wrote once more. You were right. About all of it. I didn't reply. She wasn't wrong, but I didn't need her to say it. She needed to say it for herself. My mother apologized again, but this time not with words, with presence. She asked about Liam. She showed up to display. She stayed longer. Didn't bring up Katie. Didn't try to justify. Just stood beside me and clapped when it mattered. That was enough. One evening, months after I thought the story was over, I got a letter. Not an email. A handwritten letter. From Katie. She wrote about how she'd gone to therapy. How she'd unpacked her patterns. How she now saw what she hadn't before. She didn't ask for anything. Just said thank you. For how I raised Liam. For the version of myself I'd become. And finally, for letting her fall out of my life without dragging her name through the mud. She said she lived with regret. I folded the letter. Placed it in a drawer. Not out of sentiment. Just because it felt like the final line in a book I'd already closed. A week later, I stood on a stage. The largest crowd I'd ever spoken to. Hundreds in the audience. A screen behind me. My name beneath a single word. Resilience. I told the story. Not for them. For me. Because every time I spoke it out loud, it lost power. And I gained it back. I said, some of you are waiting for someone to make it make sense. I'm here to tell you, some things don't. But you don't have to stay stuck in them just because they broke you once. The applause was long, but I didn't linger in it. I walked off stage, took a deep breath, and called Liam. He answered on the first ring. How is it? He asked. Loud. I smiled. But I'm good. You always say that now, he laughed. Because it's true now. We hung up. I walked back to my hotel. No fanfare. Just my own footsteps, steady and simple. Some stories don't end with closure. They end when you finally outgrow the noise. And I had. Fully. Finally. Quietly.